Hello there. I'm recording this on the 9th of January. We're not even 10 days into 2020, and I think I speak for everybody when I say this year can fuck off already. This year is not even 2 weeks old, and I'm already the most tired I've ever been in my life, and quite scared as well at the same time. So with that in mind, if you're going to watch this video, just to leave a snarky comment like, or you could have ironed the flag before you put it up there, or get a fucking haircut, you hippie. Let me just say this, I've got a lot on, okay, so fuck off. This year I'm going to bring you a series of satirical videos and podcast essays where I approach a subject as a complete novice. Why am I doing that? Because there are plenty of people out there who take a bunch of subjects and complain about them or spread lies about them or deny aspects of them, such as climate change, gender, sexuality, socialism, race issues, just to name a few. And each and every time, these people who comment about those subjects haven't got a fucking clue what they're talking about. So I thought it'd be interesting to approach a hot topic in the same way the uneducated do, but with one key difference between us, and that is I'm going to do it without being a massive bigoted dick. It can be done, guys. It turns out that you can be ill-informed or accidentally ignorant about a subject without coming across as an absolute arsehole towards other people. And of course, as you may have guessed, the first subject I'm going to cover is gender, with a little bit of sexuality thrown in there as well. So, ladies and gentlemen and other, this is a beginner's guide to transphobia.
There is no liberal elite, nobody stifling your speech. It's still the same old boys on top. You're quite a little melting pot. Nobody's saying you can't be as violent. You want.
Now, I don't know if you know this, but the amount of trans people across the entire world is a teeny tiny amount of people, and I'll talk more about that a bit later on. But despite the rarity of trans people, despite the fact they barely exist really, they remain a major online topic that I personally see discussed every single day by supporters of trans people and trans issues and absolute cunts who hate them. Let's be honest, it is quite a confusing subject for many people, myself included. Generally novices, people who don't know much about that situation, will get the most angry, I find. It's also a very sensitive subject, and anyone who's seen any of my previous videos knows that sensitivity probably isn't my strong suit. So before we begin, here are the obligatory disclaimers. Now, you may hear some offensive jokes or opinions in this video. Okay, it's not out of malice. Yeah, I'm on your side, I'm an ally, but it's just the way I make videos. I may get some language wrong, like accidentally using the wrong pronouns or showing a woeful lack of knowledge about gender, but that's kind of the point of the video. I'm approaching this as a novice because I am one. That's the whole point. This is the murky world of online transphobia and hatred towards sexuality through the eyes of an observer. And what better observer can you have than a straight white male who doesn't have a fucking clue what he's talking about? Because there's not enough of them on YouTube at the moment, is there? Also, I will be referencing the Contrapoints video that you've all seen, just to let you know if you are offended by any of this or you do want to cancel me, that's probably a good thing, because if you've seen, after 4 years, I've got less than 4,000 subscribers. This channel is a relative failure, really. There are some people who really enjoy it, and I make these videos just for those small amounts of people. But if this video does indeed get some more views than normal and people are offended, actually do me a favour by cancelling me, I think, because I could be doing a lot of other things that are more productive, you know. Now, I've noticed that transphobes come in many forms. You may be a troll. You may be a sour-faced, allegedly anti-Semitic author. You may be a TERF, which is a trans exclusionary radical feminist, who, like your average troll, doesn't realise that feminism simply means equality for all, no matter what gender you are or what gender you identify as. For TERFs, calling yourself a feminist, but then behaving in exactly the opposite way of a feminist, is indeed a radical position to take, so I'll give them that, okay? But I'm sure they do not get the irony of what they're doing right there. Calling themselves one thing when they are most certainly not what they claim. If you're a TERF and you're offended by that joke, please take your opinion and shove it up your arse, but Not in a gay way, because you wouldn't like that now, would you? Being a TERF is very much like being a magazine enthusiast. Bear with me on this one. A magazine enthusiast. You're going around every day of the week saying stuff like, magazines are great. Everyone should read magazines. I love magazines. Support magazines, guys. Wait a minute. Is that a guy reading Cosmopolitan? No! No! That is not allowed! That is not allowed! It must be absolutely exhausting being that full of anger 24/7. As I mentioned a minute ago, another transphobic group of people are your common or garden trolls. Bigoted trolls love to come across any online discussion about trans people or gender or non-binary issues and so forth, so they can make their one and only joke. No, I'm not talking about them saying the word soy, which technically isn't a joke, it's just them saying a word very loudly. No, they have their one random joke, which goes roughly like this. If that guy in a dress can identify as a woman, then I can identify as anything that I want, such as a toaster or a helicopter or someone with a decent sense of humor. Remember, these are the same poorly educated people who say things like, you do realize that the Nazis were socialists because they called themselves National Socialists, right? That means that the well-known far-right fascists were actually somehow a bunch of snowflake lefties. Yeah, they don't teach you that in history class, do they now? I'm very clever. Thank you for listening. MAGA! So let's go over that again. Bigots and twats think that Nazis are socialists because the word socialist is in their name. They think that TERFs are feminists because the word feminist is in their name, but they do not extend that belief to trans women who have the word women in their name. It's a tad hypocritical, is it not? So if you're not J.K. Rowling, or a TERF, or a common or garden troll, there's only one other transphobe that you could be. You must be a 51-year-old former comedy hero to millions whose new skill is to shit on his own legacy with every single tweet that he sends.
Chair!
Well done, Father.
Curtains!
Yes, that's right.
Floor!
All coming back to you, is it, Father?
Gobshite! Yes! I remember!
Now, I have a story about Graham Linehan related to me and him, which I'll tell you now. And it's about my current Twitter account when it was in its infancy. I believe that's well over 5 years ago, okay? And back in the day, I noticed that Graham Linehan was getting on his high horse quite a lot on Twitter. You know, telling people off, telling people how to behave and so forth. And interestingly, he never ever mentioned trans people back then. It's almost like he has an agenda now, isn't it? Anyway, he's getting on his high horse, so I wrote, without including his @ in a tweet, I observed that Graham Linehan is basically now a Twitter policeman. I better not say anything wrong in case he blocks me. A friend of mine then replied to that tweet and said, yeah, he'll get very offended and block you or something like that. But he included Graham Linehan's @ in the reply, the absolute fucking bastard, right? So within a few seconds, Graham Linehan had blocked me, and I've been blocked ever since. It must be well over 5 years now, okay? And I don't know if you can see any correlation between that behaviour then and what he's up to now. Very similar thing, but incredibly bigoted this time around, isn't it? It's no surprise when you learn that his current behaviour stems from one time that he was criticised. He made a programme called The IT Crowd, and one of the characters that he wrote for, which is Matt Berry, he has a joke where he beats a trans woman until she is bloody. Now, I'm struggling to see where the punchline is there. I don't know if anyone else is as well, but apparently that was a joke. And someone criticised him online, and he initially said, yeah, you're probably right, I could have handled that a bit better, but didn't let it lie. He then decided to start this never-ending campaign against trans people since that day. He's a man who clearly cannot take criticism, which is very strange indeed, to really have that stuck in your craw after all these years. If you thought that story was too long and you sort of zoned out in the middle of that, let me just sum it up in a few words. Let's do it like a headline, okay? Twitter policeman turns out to be prejudiced. This is the first example of a policeman hating people who are different than him. Got it? Good. You know, as a aside, I find it quite weird how Ricky Gervais and Graham Linehan were not satisfied in any way with being comedy greats and loved by everybody. So they, for some reason, decided to ruin everything by doing the "Are you triggered? But are you triggered though? Are you triggered? You look triggered to me? Are you offended, Snowflake? Are you offended?" shit that Gervais does, or becoming an extreme example of a bigot like Graham Linehan. Sure, you can make lots of money and get lots of attention if you're prepared to be bland, Gervais, or a cunt for attention, Linehan, but you must be painfully aware that your fan base is now entirely comprised of arseholes and no decent person in the world respects you even slightly. Well done, guys. Before we move on to the next section, have you noticed that transphobes rarely direct their irrational anger towards trans men, aka people who were born female at birth but then transitioned to being a male? For transphobes, it's weird that trans men barely exist for them. They direct all their anger towards trans women normally. Now, this could be for a number of reasons. First of all, there are far fewer trans men than there are trans women, but primarily I'm guessing that transphobes might just be misogynistic overall, right? So a person, man, becoming more feminine over time is worse to them than a person becoming more masculine over time. It's just a theory, which is definitely correct. Now, here's where the video gets a bit worrying, because I have realised something. I've realised that I've got quite a few things in common with transphobes. Too many things, in fact. But before you switch off, please allow me to explain. I'm a straight white male, so already I've got many things in common with your average internet bigot. I suppose I'll be described as cis, I think. It's not heteronormative, that's the bad one, isn't it? I can't remember, right? I cannot remember without Googling it here and now. And I'm using my phone to record this fucking video, so that's not going to happen, right? Also, I can't be bothered to check. I'm just going to stick with calling myself a straight male here and sound like a fucking boomer. And I don't care, okay, about that situation. I don't care if I sound like a boomer, honestly. Boomers are strange, aren't they? Granted, they're all out of touch, but at the same time, they are aware of how to use Google. And yet none of them use it to educate themselves before shouting at a stranger online. It's too much to remember, but luckily, as the Contrapoints video has told us, there's always someone online who's eager to correct you. It's a valid observation that sex and gender in this century is sometimes confusing. Try and argue about that with me if you want. Don't get me wrong, when I'm online, I want to say the right things to LGBTQ people. I don't want to piss them off, but I'm already aware that I've probably missed a few letters out of LGBTQ, etc., and therefore I've already offended a few people who are watching right now. It's not my intention, I'm just not educated enough on the subject, you know? I mean, for example, is someone trans officially transgender, transsexual, non-binary, or gender non-conforming, or is it all four? All I'm saying, guys, is we need to bring back pamphlets, just simple pamphlets that describe everything. We need a universal website that describes everything in detail, but is easy to understand. So idiots like me can just get on board. I look at it a couple of times, I'm clued up. At the moment, I am the worst millennial that's ever existed with my lack of knowledge about all of these things. It's a disgrace. I know that tranny as a word is not allowed anymore, even though it includes the tran bit from the word trans. It's similar to folks who say people of colour now, when less than 2 years ago, if you said coloured people in the UK, you'd be rightly branded as a racist. It's a fucking minefield, people, that's what I'm telling you. If you take anything away from Contrapoints' recent video about cancel culture, is that people's offensive tweets or statements about trans people or non-binary people are usually errors or poorly worded or unintentionally offensive. So everybody just calm down, okay? Just come together and, if you can, vote for Bernie. That's all I want out of life, okay? Just something to make us happy. We can do it together. Another reason why I'm similar to a transphobe or a bigot is that in real life, aka outside of Twitter and Facebook, I have 0 trans friends, right? Granted, on social networks, I have a bunch of people who are trans and non-binary that I talk to all the time, and we're good mates, but in real life, as it were, I've met very few. This is despite living in Brighton, which, if you don't know, is essentially the San Francisco of the UK. It's the gay capital of Britain, where the stereotype is something like this, but about 1,000,000 times gayer. I lived in the LGBTQIA, etc. capital of Britain for 3 years, clearly learned fuck all about the whole situation there. And as far as I recall, I only ever met one trans lady in my 3 years of being there. Now, I'm not saying they all have to, put on a parade for us to let us know they're there. It only happens once a year, but they don't, they don't gather in spaces that I go to just to say, hey, I'm a bit different. Take it on board. Get used to it. So I've only ever met one trans lady in real life. She went behind the bar. She had big hands. She had a deep voice. She, big shoulders, smoked a pipe. There were some clues to her original gender. I think it's fair to say she was mid-transition rather than full transition. So I've not even met like a completed trans lady. Is that a good terminology? So the only interaction I've ever had with a trans woman in my life is saying, hello, can I have a pint of cider, please? How much? £6? Fucking hell! And that's it. That's the only interaction I've ever had, right? In fact, I've met more trans men, 2, than I've met trans women, 1. And I lived in fucking Brighton. So I think it's clear to say I've given you enough evidence to show you that I am as ignorant and uninformed and just thick regarding trans people and trans issues. But internet bigots, how come I don't hate them just like you do? Seriously, people get so angry about other people's relatively new approach to gender, despite transgender people only making up 0.5% of the population. It's barely anybody, right? More recent studies released in 2016 estimate the proportion of Americans who identify as transgender at 0.5 to 0.6%. This would put the total number of transgender Americans at approximately 1.4 million adults as of 2016. And there are this amount of people in total in America. It's a drop in the ocean, is it not? Stats tell us that only around 0.002% of people born female have gender dysphoria, and between 0.005 to 0.014% of people assigned male at birth have gender dysphoria, which basically means, if you don't know, they're not comfortable with the gender they were born with, and in most cases have a desire to change genders. As I mentioned earlier in the video, stats on this subject are few and far between, but I'm confident that these numbers will rise slightly, if not significantly, as more and more people become confident in expressing their gender dysphoria, the desire to change genders, the gender they identify with now or in the future, whatever. And I think that it's going to be very interesting come the next census, which is due soon, by the way, I think in about a year. There's a census in the UK, and we will learn a lot more about the actual current numbers of trans and non-binary people in our populace, right? And of course, prediction alert, in a couple of years when these figures come out, the right wing and the far right press will go absolutely mental, saying that all the men are cutting their dicks off and all the left want us to turn into ladies or something like that. That's the general gist of it. But in reality, more people are just being vocal about the situation and feel more comfortable than ever before to actually commit in changing their lives regarding gender and things like sexuality and stuff like that. Pronouns in bio. Let's take a minute to talk about that, shall we? I personally don't put pronouns in my Twitter bio for 2 reasons. Number one, on the rare occasion that I'll wade into a debate about gender and similar things, the absence of he/him in my bio actually stops cowards from running away from arguments with their well-known catchphrase, pronouns in bio. Pronouns in bio. Pronouns in bio. Mummy. Second reason, I recognise that pronouns are often used to show support to the trans community, non-binary people, etc. But I show my support in other ways, like donating to Donkey Kong charity streams, or, I don't know, just not screaming and shouting at trans people online and treating them with a thing called respect. It's just a small thing that some people could do as well if they wanted. I have concluded that transphobes exist for 4 separate reasons. Number one, Good old-fashioned homophobia. Gone are the days when you can just scream and shout at gay men for being gay. But whilst people don't fully understand transphobia, you can just about unleash hell on them without getting too much pushback from the mainstream. They just generally ignore the issue, especially if you're rich and you already have made a bunch of movies about a kid who's magic, or a TV program about some funny priest on an island. You can do whatever the fuck you want, it turns out, online, which is very frustrating. Reason number 2, because some trans women are hot as hell. And this, I believe, gives many a bigot a bit of a boner. I mean, how could you not find these women attractive? Third reason why people are transphobes is a sex and gender issue. To try and disguise and excuse their bigotry, some transphobes will talk about chromosomes, genitalia, and it always leads with them saying stuff like, therefore, can't be a real woman if you've got a penis. And also, trans men don't exist. Now, it's a difficult topic. I do not feel ready to talk about that subject without having good knowledge about surgeries and whatnot, and changing your gender, literally under the knife. So with that in mind, I'm not going to talk about it. And also, I'm going to ask you very kindly if you can refrain from talking about that particular part of trans life in the comments section, okay? This isn't a video about surgeries and about chopping your knob off, or whatever you want to, however you want to phrase it. This is just about identifying and living as trans people, not about the process itself, okay? I'm not qualified to talk about it. I know that most people who talk about it online are not qualified to talk about it, bigots and so forth. So just shut the fuck up about it. Don't talk about it in the comment section. If you do, I simply will not approve any of the comments that you post, because I'm in charge. That people don't realize this. I'm in charge. I can let people see whatever comments I want them to see. You can't just type and it appears. Those days are gone, guys. You cannot behave yourselves, okay? So, you've only got yourself to blame about this. Listen, let's put it another way, right? I will fully admit that despite being almost 40 years old, yeah, I know, baby face, it's because I'm short. But despite being almost 40 years old, despite having some loving and or sexual relationships with women, despite staying awake during biology class, I must admit, I do not know the first thing about women, and I never will. No man does, ever. So with that in mind, if I know nothing about women, what makes you think I know anything about the anatomy of a trans woman? I am fully non-educated about the issue of actual things they do with their bodies and stuff. So I would not embarrass myself by talking about it, and neither should you. So shut the fuck up. Reason number 4 why people are transphobes: some people are just cunts. The end.
You really hunger for the time when you could say what's on your mind. You feel oppressed when you were told all of your politics are old, and nobody's saying you can't be as wild as you want.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to my non-binary fineries and everyone in between, thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you haven't taken too much offence as I tried to very crudely make my way through the world of trans people and transphobia. I told you I was on your side, but I've done it in a very strange way, haven't I? I just wanted to do the obligatory thank you to people who give money to me to make these videos. So there are a couple of ways to support this channel. First of all, there will be some merch available, hopefully, I pray that this works, in about a month's time. That merch will be available on Bandcamp. It will be audio merch, so there'll be 3 interviews I did about 3 to 4 years ago, which haven't been available to the public for the last couple of years, because they're not really related so much to what the stuff I'm doing now, but I still think they're very interesting and very entertaining. And if you want to support this channel and actually get something physical back, then you can listen to these 3 hour-and-a-half roughly recordings for very little money. They'll be on sale for $1 or $2, however, whatever the lowest amount I can put on Bandcamp. You can decide the amount if you can. Please keep an eye on my Twitter at ASM_antisocial, and you'll be informed when that audio is on Bandcamp. Also, you can give money if you'd like on Patreon. I only charge once every 2 months because I don't really make that many videos. I only charge for the big project videos like this one. You only get charged therefore 6 times a year, every 2 months. So if you give $1 every 2 months, then you'll pay $6 overall over the whole year, plus a few service charges that Patreon puts on. It's not a lot of money, $6, but to me it makes a massive, massive difference. I cannot underestimate how broke I am, okay, and always have been, living paycheck to paycheck all the fucking time. If you want, you can send me money directly via PayPal, or you can buy me a coffee via Ko-Fi. There's plenty of options there for people who are feeling generous. And remember, just $1 once, and that's it. That's the only payment you make, will make a huge difference. I swear to God it will. Please remember that I generally make podcasts in between these big video projects. That's my main thing that I'm doing at the moment in 2020. They will be released when I can, when I've got the time to do so. I live in this new environment now, which is a bit quieter, so there's lots of potential recording time. They'll be uploaded all to YouTube, so do subscribe here if it's nice and easy for you. But they will be available in audio form on your regular podcast outlets, iTunes, Spreaker, SoundCloud, all those kind of places. If they're not in a place that you're looking at or that you use at the moment, please let me know and I'll add it to that particular service if I can. Apart from that, guys, again, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, laters, betas.